Hey there, welcome to another deep dive.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Today we're tackling UFOs,
UFOs are
but not in the way you might expect.
Okay.
We're diving into the UFOs that never were.
Interesting.
It's a book by Jenny Randles, Andy Roberts, and Dr. David Clarke,
I've heard of them.
all researchers who've spent a lot of time trying to separate
Right.
fact from fiction in the world of UFO sightings.
Yeah, it's a tricky world.
For sure.
Lots of misinformation out there.
Exactly. So this book,
Yeah.
it's a fascinating exploration of cases that initially seemed like solid evidence of alien visitors,
Right.
but ultimately turned out to have very earthly explanations.
That's right, yeah.
So it's kind of like a reality check
It is, yeah.
on some of the most famous UFO stories out
A
there.
lot of those.
We've got a stack of intriguing cases to unravel.
I love a good mystery.
Me too.
Spanning.
Over a century
Wow.
from those mysterious 1890s airships.
Right.
To modern incidents, that'll make you question
Yeah.
what you think you know about UFOs.
I'm excited.
Me too.
Oh, God.
Well, and what's really interesting is that
Mm.
by looking at these debunked cases,
Right.
we can learn a lot about human psychology,
For sure.
how our hopes and fears,
Oh, yeah.
cultural trends,
Mm.
even plain old misperceptions
All playing a part.
can all contribute to these UFO narratives.
And it's easy to get caught up
It is, yeah.
in that.
For sure.
Especially when it comes to something as mysterious as UFOs.
Absolutely.
It's natural to want to believe.
Exactly. And speaking of misperceptions,
Okay.
let's start with the airship craze
Okay.
of the late 19th century.
Right.
Before airplanes took over the skies,
Back in the day.
people were fascinated by the idea of airships.
Yeah, it makes sense.
These giant cigar-shaped vessels floating around.
Had to be mind-blowing at the time.
It was a pretty wild concept at the time.
Yeah, for sure.
And
Yeah.
that fascination really set the stage.
Go for a wave of UFO sightings in the 1890s.
Makes sense.
Especially in the United States.
A lot of activity.
A lot of reports from over there.
Yeah.
People were seeing these mysterious airships everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And some of those sightings got pretty outlandish.
Outlandish. Okay.
Like the Aurora, Texas airship crash of 1897.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of this one.
This story had it all. A crashed,
Airship.
an alien pilot,
Oh, wow.
a secret burial. It sounds a lot like the Roswell incident,
It does. Yeah.
just decades earlier.
Interesting parallel.
Right. It's almost uncanny how those two stories share so many elements.
I'm intrigued.
But here's the thing.
Yeah.
The Aurora crash was actually a hoax.
A hoax.
Wait, seriously?
Yep.
A hoax.
It seems that way.
So the folks in Aurora
Yeah.
were hoping to drum up some tourism
Ah, that makes sense.
and give their local economy a boost.
Right.
They even went so far as to plant debris from a wrecked windmill
Oh, wow.
to make the story more believable. So they really went all out.
They did.
Hey.
So they straight up fabricated an alien crash landing to attract tourists.
Bold move.
That's ambitious.
It is, yeah.
And you know what?
What's that?
It worked.
It worked?
The story got picked up by newspapers across the country, and
Ah.
people flocked to Aurora to see the supposed wreckage.
I guess that's one way to put your town on the map.
But how long did they manage to keep up the charade?
Yeah, how long did it last?
It wasn't until decades later that a researcher named Barbara Tolbert uncovered the truth.
Oh, wow.
She found an article from the Dallas Times-Herald, published back in 1986,
Right.
that debunked the whole thing.
So it took a while for the truth to come out.
It did.
Interesting.
Turns out the hoax started as a joke among some railroad workers,
Oh, wow.
and it just kind of spiraled out of control from there.
So a harmless prank turned into
Yeah.
a full-blown...
A full-blown, alien crash landing.
It's amazing how these things can snowball.
It makes you wonder about the motivations behind hoaxes like this.
Yeah, what drives people?
Was it just a harmless prank that got out of hand?
Right.
Or were they deliberately trying to deceive people?
It's a good question.
And it gets at the heart of why some people create hoaxes.
Yeah.
It could be for attention, for financial gain,
Right.
or even for a sense of power.
All of the above.
Whatever the reason,
Yeah.
it's clear that hoaxes can exploit
Uh-huh.
our natural curiosity
Definitely.
and desire to believe in something extraordinary.
People are drawn to the unknown.
And the fact that the Aurora story still circulates in UFO circles,
Well.
even after being debunked,
Shows the lasting power of a good story.
it shows how a good story can take on a life of its own.
It does.
Especially when it taps into our deepest fears and desires.
Right.
It's a testament to the power of belief
Yeah.
and how a compelling narrative
Uh-huh.
can sometimes overshadow even the most concrete evidence.
People want to believe.
So we've got hoaxes on one end of the spectrum.
Okay.
But what about genuine misidentifications?
That's the other side of the coin.
Let's jump ahead a few decades to the Cold War era,
All right.
where anxieties about the unknown ran high.
Tensions were definitely high.
Now we can't talk about UFOs without at least mentioning Roswell, right?
Is the big one.
It's like the granddaddy of all UFO conspiracy theories.
Roswell is iconic.
Roswell is definitely iconic, and its influence on UFO lore is undeniable.
I agree.
But for this deep dive, we're going to shift our focus to another case that often gets compared to Roswell.
All right, I'm curious.
The Howden Moor incident in the UK back in 1997.
Okay, Howden Moor.
All right, so what exactly happened at Howden Moor?
What went down?
Imagine a stormy night in the Yorkshire moors.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
You've got multiple witnesses
Oh, wow.
reporting a low-flying aircraft,
Okay.
then a bright flash in the sky, followed by an explosion.
Sounds familiar.
It does have that Roswell vibe to it.
Yeah, there is.
So did they uncover some alien spaceship wreckage?
That's the question.
Hidden in the moors.
Not on the edge of my seat.
Well, that's what some people believed at the time.
I bet.
The incident triggered a massive search operation
Wow.
involving the military.
Oh, so it was a big deal.
And all sorts of rumors about a government cover-up.
The plot thickens.
But unlike Roswell,
Yeah.
where the mystery remains largely unsolved,
Right.
the Howden Moor case has a much more down-to-earth explanation.
Okay, so what really happened?
Okay, I'm intrigued.
Lay it on me.
Break it down for us.
All right.
What were people actually seeing that night?
What was it then?
It seems like a perfect storm of factors contributed to the UFO perception.
Interesting.
There was a military exercise happening in the area
Ah, that makes sense.
with low-flying jets that could easily be mistaken
Right?
for something more unusual.
Yeah, especially at night.
Plus, there were reports of a bright meteor and some unusual weather conditions that could have distorted light and sound, making everything seem
I can see how that would happen.
even more strange and otherworldly.
Like something out of this world.
So a combination of military activity,
Okay.
a meteor,
Mm-hmm.
and some atmospheric trickery.
A recipe for misidentification.
That's a far cry from a crashed alien spaceship.
Yeah, no little green men this time.
But in the context of the Cold War,
Right.
with all its anxieties about spies,
It was a tense time.
secret weapons, and the constant threat of nuclear war,
Yeah, a lot of fear and paranoia.
it's not hard to see how those real-world fears could shape
Absolutely.
people's perceptions and lead them to believe in something more extraordinary.
It's easy to jump to conclusions when you're afraid.
And of course, we can't forget the role of the media in all of this.
Oh, yeah, the media plays a huge role.
A few ambiguous sightings, a dash of speculation, and suddenly you've got a full-blown UFO saga on your hands.
And it spreads like wildfire.
Absolutely. The media can play a huge role in amplifying these narratives,
They do.
often focusing on the most sensational aspects of a story.
Right. Got to get those clips.
Even if those aspects are based on speculation rather than solid evidence.
Sensationalism sells.
It's a reminder that we need to be critical consumers of information,
Absolutely.
especially when it comes to extraordinary claims.
Do your research.
But more on that later.
Okay.
For now, let's shift gears
All right.
and talk about a case that really highlights how our own expectations can play tricks on us.
Okay, I'm all ears. It's wild, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
How our brains work.
It's like our brains prefer a good story,
Right.
even if it's not entirely true.
Yeah, we love a good narrative.
Speaking of stories,
Okay.
this next one takes us to a school playground.
A school playground, all right?
In Oxfordshire, England, in 1973.
Okay, back in the 70s.
And it involves a UFO sighting that,
Man.
at first glance, seemed pretty convincing.
Convincing, okay.
The Chilton School UFO.
I know this one.
This case really got people talking.
Yeah, it was a big one.
Especially because there were multiple witnesses,
Multiple witnesses.
including school children and a teacher.
Wow, so quite a few people saw something.
All described seeing this bright orange object hovering in the sky.
A bright orange object.
And it wasn't just word of mouth, right?
Right.
There were actual photographs
Oh!
taken by an amateur photographer named Peter Day.
Photographic evidence. That's pretty compelling.
The photographs added an extra layer of intrigue
Yeah, it gets you...
to the case because at the time,
Right.
no aircraft were reported missing.
So there's no easy explanation.
So nobody could explain what those images actually showed.
That's strange.
So you've got a daytime sighting,
Okay.
multiple witnesses,
Right.
photographic evidence.
It sounds like a pretty solid UFO case.
It certainly had all the ingredients
It did, yeah.
for a classic UFO mystery.
But there's a twist, isn't there?
There's always a
I
twist.
was going to say,
But like many of the cases we're discussing,
Right.
there's a twist.
Okay, let's hear it.
A few years later, new information came to light.
Oh, what happened?
That shed a completely different light
Interesting.
on the incident.
I'm intrigued. Go on.
It turns out that about 40 minutes after the UFO sighting, an F-111 fighter jet crashed.
A fighter jet crashed. Wow.
Roughly 20 miles away.
So not too far from the school.
That seems like a pretty big coincidence.
Yeah, that's a bit too close for comfort.
It does, does it?
What are the chances?
It's more than just a coincidence.
Yeah.
The details of the F-111 crash actually provide a very plausible explanation for what those witnesses saw that day.
I'm listening.
You see, the F-111 had suffered an engine fire.
Oh, no.
And was forced to dump fuel.
At high altitude.
At high altitude.
Okay.
Wait a minute. Are you suggesting that what people thought was a UFO was actually burning jet fuel?
Burning jet fuel. That would explain the bright orange light.
Exactly.
Wow, that's a crazy thought.
The timing and location of the fuel dump line up perfectly with the UFO sighting.
So it all fits.
The orange glow that witnesses described.
Right.
The way the objects seem to break apart in the sky.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It all fits with the behavior of burning jet fuel.
It's a much more mundane explanation.
It is, yeah.
Than a UFO.
But kind of terrifying when you think about it.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
A school playground narrowly avoided a fiery disaster from the sky.
That's a scary thought.
It really is a chilling thought.
It makes you wonder.
And it raises questions about why that information wasn't released sooner.
Right. Why the delay?
Was it a deliberate cover-up to prevent mass panic?
Possibly, or maybe just a simple oversight?
Or was it simply a case of miscommunication?
Could be.
And overlooked details?
It happens.
It's hard to say for sure.
Yeah, we may never know.
But it definitely adds another layer of complexity.
It does.
To this case.
It's a reminder that things aren't always what they seem.
And it reminds us that sometimes the truth behind a UFO sighting can be even more unsettling.
More unsettling, okay.
Than the idea of alien visitors.
So sometimes the truth is stranger than fiction.
Sometimes the most mundane explanations can have the most profound implications.
I like that.
But shifting gears a bit, let's talk about a case that really highlights how our expectations can shape our perception of events.
Expectations, yeah.
We're heading back to 1981.
Okay, back to the 80s.
To Clarke Fell in Yorkshire, England.
Clarke Fell, all right.
Clarke Fell! That name rings a bell.
It does sound familiar.
Wasn't there some talk about a structured craft?
Oh, yeah, I remember that one.
Being photographed there.
A structured craft.
You're remembering correctly.
I was, wasn't I?
2 police officers.
Police officers from...
reported seeing strange lights on the fell.
Okay.
And they even managed to snap some photos.
Wow, so they got pictures.
Police officers as witnesses.
That's interesting.
And photographic evidence.
Yeah, it does add some weight.
That sounds pretty compelling.
It does.
It certainly caught the attention of the Yorkshire UFO Society.
UFOs, right?
Known as UFOs.
They're pretty well known in the UFO community.
They were convinced that the photos showed some kind of solid, unknown object.
Oh, really?
Hence the term structured craft.
So they believed it was something tangible.
They even claimed that a scientific analysis...
A scientific analysis? Wow.
...of the photos supported their conclusion.
Interesting.
So a structured craft.
Yeah, what exactly does that mean?
Does that mean like a spaceship or something?
Essentially, yes.
Essentially, yes.
It implied some sort of intelligently designed vehicle.
Okay.
Not just a natural phenomenon.
Not just something random.
Right. Something created by intelligent beings.
But as with many UFO cases...
there's always another side to the story.
There's more to the story.
I was going to say.
A researcher named Nigel Mortimer.
Nigel Mortimer, okay.
Who is known for his meticulous approach.
Meticulous. So he's thorough.
Decided to dig a little deeper.
And so he wanted to get to the bottom of it.
And what did he find?
What did he uncover?
Well, Nigel had a knack for uncovering seemingly insignificant details.
Those little things can be important.
In this case, he stumbled upon a newspaper article.
A newspaper article?
That mentioned a peculiar natural light reflection phenomenon.
Oh, a light reflection.
That was known to occur on Clarke Fell.
So a trick of the light.
A light reflection. You mean like a trick of the light?
Exactly.
And as he investigated further,
it
became clear that the police officers had likely misidentified a sunlight reflection.
Ah, so they were fooled by the light.
On the rocky slopes of the fell.
It happened.
It just so happened
that
the angle of the sun combined with the atmospheric conditions that day, created a very unusual visual effect.
So a perfect storm of conditions.
So the police officers, despite their training and experience,
it can happen to anyone,
were fooled by a simple trick of the light.
Our brains can be easily tricked.
It happens more often than you might think.
I believe it.
Our brains are wired to seek patterns and explanation.
We want to make sense of things.
And sometimes, especially in low light conditions, or when we're primed to see something unusual,
we see what we want to see.
We can misinterpret what our eyes are telling us.
It's like an optical illusion.
It's amazing how easily
it really is.
Our expectations can influence our perceptions.
Especially when it comes to UFOs.
Especially when we're dealing with something as mysterious and loaded with meaning.
It's a powerful concept.
As a UFO.
For sure.
And this case also shows how even groups dedicated to investigating UFOs, like UFOs, can sometimes cling to their initial beliefs.
They can get attached to their theories.
Even when presented with evidence that contradicts their conclusions.
It's hard to let go of something you believe in.
It's like that saying, we see what we want to see.
Very true.
But let's move on to our final case.
Okay, ready.
Which takes us to the Isle of Lewis.
Isle of Lewis, all right.
Off the coast of Scotland.
Up north.
This one has all the hallmarks.
Oh, does it?
Of a classic UFO crash retrieval conspiracy theory.
Crash retrieval? Okay.
It does, doesn't it?
I'm intrigued.
This case really captures the imagination.
Yeah, I can see why.
Because it has everything.
Everything? Like what?
A mysterious explosion.
Classic.
A massive search operation that comes up empty.
Suspicious.
Cryptic radio messages.
Oh, wow.
And even the alleged involvement of a shadowy government research facility.
This is getting good.
Okay, you've definitely got my attention.
Hit me with it.
Let's dive into the details. What exactly happened?
Yeah, what went down?
On the Isle of Lewis.
I'm all ears.
Yeah.
It all started in 1996.
Okay, 96.
When people reported a loud explosion and a bright flash in the sky.
Over the island?
Over the island, yeah.
So pretty dramatic.
It was. It naturally sparked a lot of concern.
I bet.
The RAF, the Coast Guard, even local volunteers.
Wow, so everyone got involved.
Joined in a massive search operation.
Combing the area.
Combing the area for any signs of a crashed aircraft or debris.
And what did they find?
Nothing.
Nothing.
Absolutely nothing.
Which, of course, fueled speculation.
It would.
That something extraordinary had happened.
Right. There had to be an explanation.
Something that the authorities were trying to cover up.
Classic cover-up.
So, what were people's theories about what really went down?
Yeah, what were they saying?
Well, the lack of any wreckage led some to believe that whatever exploded wasn't a conventional aircraft.
Right. Had to be something else.
Then came the rumors of intercepted radio chatter.
Oh, radio chatter, juicy.
During the search, with people claiming that the messages mentioned specific dimensions that didn't match any known aircraft.
Dimensions, that's interesting.
Dimensions, huh?
Yeah, like size or shape.
That sounds intriguing.
Yeah.
What kind of dimensions are we talking about?
That's the thing. Nobody seems to know for sure.
Really?
It's one of those details that gets repeated and embellished over time.
Right. It becomes part of the story.
Being part of the mythos surrounding the event.
But those alleged dimensions, coupled with the fact that the RAF seemed to take control of the search very quickly.
They swooped in.
Fed into the idea of a government cover-up.
Makes sense. They don't want anyone to know.
Right. Any hint of secrecy or official silence just adds fuel to the conspiracy fire.
It just makes people more suspicious.
And then to top it all off...
Okay, what else?
Rumors surfaced that Sandia National Laboratories...
Sandia,
a U.S. government research facility.
Right. I've heard of them.
Known for its work on advanced technologies.
So cutting-edge stuff.
Was somehow involved in the investigation.
Interesting. A U.S. agency involved in a U.K. incident.
Sandia National Laboratories.
That name definitely has a secret government projects ring to it.
Right.
And their supposed involvement, combined with everything else, created a perfect storm of speculation.
All the ingredients were there?
It seemed like all the pieces are in place.
For a classic UFO crash retrieval scenario.
Classic, yeah.
But like most good conspiracy theories,
there's usually a simpler explanation.
The reality is probably much simpler.
I was going to say.
Okay, I'm
on the edge of my seat here.
All right, let's hear it.
What's the real story?
What really happened?
Behind the Isle of Lewis explosion.
Okay.
Well, while the official explanation is still somewhat ambiguous.
Ambiguous, okay.
There's strong evidence to suggest.
Suggesting what?
that the culprit was actually a meteor.
A meteor, really?
Astronomers and seismologists confirm.
Wow, so they have data.
That a meteor entered the atmosphere and exploded over the Isle of Lewis at the exact time of the reported incident.
Wait, so all that commotion...
All that for a meteor.
All that speculation.
It's amazing how a simple event...
was just over a meteor.
...can be blown out of proportion.
It seems that way.
It does.
Remember, a meteor explosion can be a pretty dramatic event.
Oh, yeah. For sure.
Especially a large one.
It can create quite a show.
It can create a bright flash,
right.
a loud boom, and even shake the ground.
I can see how that would be scary.
So it's not hard to see how people, especially in a remote area with little exposure to such phenomena,
they might not know what they're seeing.
Could misinterpret a meteor explosion as something more extraordinary.
It's easy to jump to conclusions when you don't have all the information.
Exactly. And once that initial misinterpretation takes hold...
Right, once the seed is planted.
It's easy for speculation and rumors to fill in the blanks.
People love a good mystery.
Especially when there's a lack of clear information.
Yeah, that just makes it worse.
Coming from official sources.
It's a recipe for conspiracy theories.
This case really highlights how a relatively straightforward event...
It does, yeah.
...can get twisted and distorted into something completely different.
It's a reminder that we need to be careful.
We do.
About the information we consume.
And how we interpret it.
It speaks to the power of suggestion.
It does.
The human tendency to seek patterns and explanations.
We want to make sense of the world.
And our fascination with the unknown.
But more importantly, it reminds us of the need for critical thinking and healthy skepticism.
We can't believe everything we hear.
When evaluating these kinds of stories.
Right, we need to be discerning.
We can't just accept extraordinary claims at face value.
We need evidence.
We need to look for evidence.
Right.
Consider alternative explanation.
And be open to different possibilities.
And be willing to question even our own assumptions.
It's about challenging our own beliefs.
So looking back at all these cases, the hoaxes, the misidentification, the instances where our own expectations clouded our judgment.
It's a lot to unpack.
What are some key takeaways?
Yeah, what can we learn from all of this?
For our listeners.
What should people take away from this deep dive?
What can we learn?
What can we learn, right?
From these UFOs that never were.
I think one of the most important takeaways is the power of critical thinking.
Critical thinking's so important.
It is. We shouldn't just accept anything we hear or read.
Especially when it comes to extraordinary claims.
Right. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence.
It's crucial to question our sources.
Always ask where the information is coming from.
Consider different perspectives.
And be open to other viewpoints.
And be willing to change our minds when presented with new evidence.
That's a tough one, but it's important to be flexible.
It's like being a detective in a way, right?
It is, like a puzzle.
You've got to gather the facts.
Look at the clues.
Weigh the evidence.
Consider all the angles.
And try to piece together the most logical explanation.
Sometimes the simplest answer is the right one.
And sometimes the simplest explanation is the most likely one.
Even if it's not as exciting as a story about aliens.
So remember, just because a story sounds convincing.
Right, just because it's a good story.
Or has a lot of people talking about it.
Doesn't mean it's true.
Doesn't mean it's true.
Do your research.
Always do your own research.
And don't be afraid to ask questions.
That's great advice.
It is.
And along those same lines, it's helpful to remember that our perceptions
how we see things
can be influenced by all sorts of things. Our cultural background.
Right. Our upbringing.
The time period we live in.
The context we're in.
Even our own personal beliefs and experiences.
All of that shapes our worldview.
Like those folks back in the 1890s who were obsessed with airships.
Airships were all the rage.
They were primed to see mysterious airships everywhere.
They wanted to believe.
Because it was such a hot topic at the time.
It was the technology of the future.
Or the Howden Moore case.
Yeah, that's a good example.
Where Cold War anxieties likely contributed to people's willingness.
They were on edge.
To believe in a UFO crash.
Fear can make you see things that aren't there.
It's a reminder that we need to be aware of our own biases.
Absolutely. We all have them.
And how they might shape our understanding of events.
It's important to be self-aware.
So, step back, take a breath.
Yeah, don't jump to conclusions.
And consider all the angles.
Look at it from different perspectives.
Before jumping to conclusions.
That's really the key.
And finally, I think it's important to acknowledge that while most UFO sightings can be explained as hoaxes, misidentifications,
the usual suspects,
or natural phenomena,
there's still a chance.
There's still a small percentage of cases
that remain genuinely unexplained.
That's right.
We don't have all the answers.
Just because we've debunked some of the most famous UFO stories
doesn't mean we've solved the mystery.
Doesn't mean we've solved the entire mystery.
The universe is a vast and mysterious place.
There's still room for wonder and exploration.
Absolutely. Keep an open mind.
But we need to approach those unexplained cases with the same critical thinking and skepticism.
Don't let your guard down.
That we apply to the debunked ones.
It's about being consistent.
So, as we wrap up our deep dive into the UFOs that never were.
This has been a fascinating journey.
It has been, yeah.
Thanks for having me.
I want to leave our listeners with this thought.
Okay, I'm listening.
Keep questioning, keep exploring.
Don't be afraid to be curious.
Keep searching for the truth.
The truth is out there.
But do it with a discerning mind.
Right. Think critically.
And a healthy dose of skepticism.
That's the best way to approach any mystery.